Hey friends, welcome back to The Skeptical Engineer. Today I want to talk about something that sits right at the intersection of science, history, and belief. The Shroud of Turin. More specifically, why I personally believe it may be the actual burial cloth of Jesus Christ. Now I didn't always think this way. In fact, I first became interested in the Shroud back in the early 1980s, when I was an atheist. Back then, I wasn't looking for proof of God. If anything, I was convinced there wasn't one. But the Shroud caught my attention because it wasn't just a religious artifact. It was being studied scientifically. In 1978, a team called the Shroud of Turin Research Project, or STURP, conducted one of the most extensive examinations ever done on any historical object. We're talking about around 30 scientists, experts in physics, chemistry, imaging, materials, science, and they didn't just look at it, they tested it using advanced non-destructive techniques like X-ray fluorescence, infrared thermography, ultraviolet photography, microscopy, and chemical sampling. This wasn't casual analysis. It was serious science, and after 5 days of direct hands-on testing, they reached a conclusion that still echoes today. STURP concluded that the image on the shroud is the image of a real human body, a man who had been scourged and crucified, and importantly, it was not the work of an artist. Even more striking, the stains on the cloth were identified as real blood, not paint, not dye, but actual blood containing hemoglobin and serum albumin. Let that sink in. This wasn't just an image. It was a forensic imprint of a tortured human body. And yet, despite all of this, they couldn't explain how the image was formed. It remains to this day an unsolved mystery. Then came 1988. 3 laboratories performed radiocarbon dating on the shroud. And the result? Medieval, roughly dated between 1260 and 1390. And just like that, the narrative changed. It's a fake. I accepted that conclusion, and for years I went back to believing there was no God. Case closed, or so I thought. Fast forward to 2019, the original 1988 data was finally released to the public. And at a conference in Italy, experts revisited the 1988 carbon dating and raised serious concerns. Their conclusion: the testing may not have been reliable. The samples used could have been contaminated or not representative of the original cloth. In fact, the data from the different labs didn't even agree properly with each other. Their message was clear: everything must be redone. That caught my attention because now the one piece of evidence that seemed decisive wasn't so certain anymore. So if the carbon dating is questionable, what about history? Critics often say the shroud appears in the 14th century, but when you look deeper, things get more interesting. There are references in early Christian writings, mentions of mysterious images not made by human hands, possible links in the Byzantine traditions, and even connections to descriptions of burial cloths in the Gospels. Now, any one of these on its own might not prove much, but taken together they form a pattern, a thread that seems to stretch back far earlier than the medieval period. It's what some would call a cumulative case, not absolute proof, but increasingly difficult to dismiss. But for me, the most compelling piece of evidence isn't the history. It's the blood. There's a statement from a British forensic pathologist, Professor James Cameron, that really struck me when he said, "From the evidence of the bloodstains alone, this is clearly not a human forgery." Think about that. If someone in the Middle Ages tried to fake this, they would have needed real human blood applied in anatomically correct ways, consistent with the crucifixion, showing post-mortem characteristics, and all of this centuries before modern forensic science even existed. Numerous medical experts who have studied the shroud have reached similar conclusions. The blood is real, the wounds are real, and the body was dead when it was wrapped. So where does that leave us? At the very least, the shroud appears to be a real burial cloth of a man who was brutally tortured and crucified in a manner strikingly consistent with the gospel accounts of Jesus. Now, does that prove it is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ? Not definitely, but it raises a powerful question. If it's not him, then who is it? Who else in history fits this exact profile? In this exact way? For me, this isn't just about evidence. It's also about following where the evidence leads. I started as a skeptic. I dismissed it when the carbon dating came out. But when I revisited the data and looked at the full picture, science, history, forensic evidence together, I found myself reconsidering, not because I wanted to believe, but because I couldn't easily explain it away anymore. So maybe the shroud is exactly what it appears to be, a silent witness, not proving everything, but pointing towards something worth investigating, something worth questioning, and maybe something worth believing. And I'm Tom, and this is The Skeptical Engineer. And thanks for watching. As suggested by my friend Deconverted Man, I am placing links to the documents I used below in the description. And until next time, keep questioning and stay skeptical.